藏家当所给说那拉，将就把罗当年家所，大概结束给别所能给着拉偏见三根竹吧，三界就当作给说那拉，将就把罗当年家所大概结束给别所能。着了偏执三界诸八九，感激都是你所能，大我堂前旁边下，当边去年等咱把果当得了下载。呀，当然做，给他妈去过去去了吧？
Ona sogela.
你能被准到嘛？我用做给他点把洗送吧，塞去了吧？其他的当帮俺做啊。南北给准到嘛哇，南巴是，他去了吧是现在，我等着他准他嘛哇是准他是干了个呀的，他嘛哇是干了个呀的是，他等着给用做个电视看的这个都是电视看了不送过来是吧？也把写出的他他们给伢们给人把做进来送个都是的，他等着用把用的，俺就当我南巴是干的是，这个是。南北准的是的干的是，你这他用作个电把写是的，开朗大的几百台吧，买的白是，他真的是可多呢，那这个效果要的是吧？
Yes. So here on this page 41, then we have all Buddhist philosophical systems, or we could say all Buddhist tenets expound the Four Noble Truth. So first we have to understand well what means to be a Buddhist, what means the Siddhanta or Dukta, yeah, the system, and also a proponent of a system. Yeah, so we have Buddhist tenet holders, and there are also external, we could say, or Tirthika, the non-Buddhist tenet holders. So all the Buddhist tenet holders propound the Four Noble Truths. Yeah? So we have to check their way to assert them, how they assert the Four Noble Truth, if there are the differences among their different views.
大人我南巴是哪样的？我做南北主的是南巴是的了的，南巴是的，其他个南巴是哪样的？结棍就送是去开朗，得了一起给带把下，他一起给带把是哪样的？的确那个他们这个概念都送啊，等着之前呢，啊，太拉下。那就把草莓完了，就等于进了，但南巴是哪个用的？是吧？
And so when we say a Buddhist, someone who is Buddhist is someone who accepts the three jewels of refuge. Yeah, so grounded on conviction, the faith of conviction, which ascertains the Four Noble Truth and which abides in non-violence. So we could say that's the very meaning of being a Buddhist.
他的呢，他南北的重大是哪的？南巴看着是一把人那样，南北重大嘛，我看着是一把人那样，呢啊，到嘎达个恰恰西是开来的样去，哦的啊，就当见个对象些的，对象他们这的呢，没大白上现实大是亲切，的呢。啊，撒切汤切是东安卫那些是大是这些，切汤切东线大那边那些是大是年纪，那两个人这个希望我是现在，然后他等着去看两眼去，他能吧？等着去那能被给等着去 켈랑에 질라 남베 중다 마와스잖아요. 바로
Yes.
바와 된듯이 다 되는 중다 마와스라데 코란게 리베 체바 체네로 드네 롱게 쳐서다 리베 체바 다 데나 기웨신 잡질라테 드네 아 롱게 쳐서다 리베 체바 체베 탈라 켈레 드르지 요데로 다 켈레 드 드저 탄제 메다바망게 사제 탄제 드네 동나ව란 시제도 망게 아 켈랑게 연초 탄제 동시 다니베 남바체 디 냥알레 데베 쇼와스나 다 들레지 켈랑네 다디 다스 켈랑 자마레 켈레드 도르토 메바 잡치기 어다 tum다스데 템보 쉬리르 다 켈레드 템보 쉬리르다 소스 tum다들 슈크사네 데네 셴게 파텐 수든 셰스 레라보 야마다 아 오두스가레 첸다 남베 tum다 마와샤 다 tum다 마와 데라데네 체라마와 도데바 셈잠바 되는 우마바 세나 나 통과마와 신답시 내 르바도 서를 총아래 싫어
So, so this was the meaning of Buddhist. So now a Buddhist tenet holder or a Buddhist proponent, that's something different. Yeah, it is someone who accepts the four seals of the Buddha Dharma. Yeah, so the four seals. So the first one is the acceptance of the fact that any composed phenomenon, any phenomenon which is composed by causes and conditions, is of the nature of impermanence. So that's the first seal. Then any phenomenon which is contaminated, any contaminated phenomenon is of the nature of suffering. The second one. And then the third one, all phenomena are empty and selfless. So that's the third one. And the last one, the fourth one, nirvana is peace. So they have to accept that. So when we say Duptamawa in Tibetan, or Siddhanta, someone who accepts a view, yeah, a tenet holder or a tenet proponent, he has or she has to accept that depending on the tradition. So there is the tradition, the transmission of the Dharma and so on, and also depending on reasoning. Yeah. So then when that person encounters a virtuous friend, then this virtuous friend transmits something, some teachings and so on. So that person will follow the teachings, but depending on the reasonings. So that's very important. So that person, depending on this reasoning, will accept the forces very firmly, yeah, that all compounded phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena are suffering, all phenomena are empty and selfless, and nirvana is peace. So that person will not discard those views, yeah, not easily at least. This person would be a tenet holder in the fact that his view or her view will be very firm. So that person will not be easily, will not discard very easily those views. So now when we speak of those systems, then in the Buddhist tradition, there is the Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamaka. Yeah, so those four systems have a reason step by step.
아야 나도 제다다 낭바스리 켄소아 낭바스리 캡 군주스 캡네 양다도 켈라네 디치 내가 탐제 게 캡네 캡네 군주스도 켈라네 사와메베 람라 주겐 세제 낭바체 데라 이에나 사 데라 이에나 사데 낭바 이에나 덴디지 인구레살레 와 다드네 낭베 디게 나네다 야로이 림바라지 야 토르친제 디네 띵 sabra shinda tunda mawa sa chigan zogo yo. Da tunda mawa tamje ki Tao kata ga chacha shisi di kenen chigi yore. Da, tao kata ga chacha shi kenen chaba tsang masa, dingshi mida sa chudu se chi kenen chigi yore. Ta nangba yongzo ge nyang, je dingshi mida chudu sa sanglo koto gu marwa. Wadre yede, rene, chungta mawa chi yinba yina, dingshi mida sa chudu se chi kenen che darwa. Wad dhugu yar, chetan danda kabdi sunye de kanyin san nangba yongzo ge, kasa chungta mawa yongza ge sunye de, nangbe chungta mawa yongzo ge, nangba yongzo ge sungu mi duwa, nangbe chungta mawa yongzo ge sungu duwa, di nenga chi yor. Yongzo ge da dingshi sungpa tang sina, wad dingshi mida tenpa shi kenen chi uwa res. Da dingshi to ne, kwaan jungrim tang, kwaan dorim ji sungu ya res. Da dingshi ke langpa de, 다 남바 중다마 탄적이 전에 제스데 얘는 딩시 되게 나와라 차라게 캐마 쉬워지겠다.
So here, as we said, to be Buddhist, it means that we accept the three jewels of the refuge, yeah? And we abide in non-violence. So that's the very basic way to be a Buddhist. And as we said also, within Buddhist people, we can say that there are some proponents, yeah, tenet holders. So a tenet holder has to accept the 4 seals, as we said. And not only that, but also the 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths. So we could say that no other person would accept that except the Buddhist tenet holders. Yeah, so only the Buddhist tenet holders would understand correctly the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So it doesn't mean that if we are Buddhist, that we are a Buddhist tenet holder. Yeah, there is no provision. It's not because we are Buddhist that we have to understand the view and so on. So this is a very important point here. So as we said, we need to accept the Four Noble Truths as being Buddhist, but still to understand them properly means that we have necessarily a Buddhist view. And those Four Noble Truths explain the way to enter in the samsara and the way to discard it. And as His Holiness says, the Four Noble Truth and the process of entering and exiting, entering and getting out of samsara. This is the way for the Four Noble Truth to explain that. And moreover, there are different ways, coarse and subtler ways to understand the Four Noble Truth.
마야 도스잖아. 다드네 도스래. 다드네 저 가인스나 다도 상당래. 다 심사부셔 봐이나. 근데 양아 중인스 송도스. 양아 중인스들 콜라 주베린 배원도 샤라 쳔다. 콜라 도베린 배원도 샤라 주당치. 니 송고야래. 다 콜 중링기 좀 발라. 림바치 다 지당 알아서 코에 난게 동네 탐색 다 대라고 바른들 랍션지도 근데 야마 중이다 알아서 두두고야 돼 내가 알아서 두두고요보다 알아서 시기야 말했어 제가 대 알아서 두당 림바대 알아서 시고였어 다 코알은 도르데 가나 도베 림바들라 인지 미지 알아서 십사고 십시 같은 로조 맞잖아 코알은 도베 림바대 영토고야 말했어 제가다 이 내가 내내질 토네 다 딘신 남샤데 다 알아서 토삼 동발라 때네 딘신 남사야 답은 셰버 셰디 개심을 셰버 차는 그랬어
So if we understand, if we examine things more properly, then we will see that the 12 links of dependent origination are taught, yeah, as His Holiness says, and if we examine this in detail, the process of the 12 links of dependent origination is taught. Yeah, so also the process of dependent origination, the 12 links explain the way to enter into samsara and the way to exit from samsara. Yeah, there are a very specific way to understand that. So of course, for all of us, we produce the 12 links, but it doesn't mean that we know them. Yeah, but still, if we want to get rid of those 12 links, it is necessary for us to understand them and to study well, because without that, it's just not possible to get rid of those 12 links of dependent arising. Yeah, so those 12 links which explain the Four Noble Truths, we need to study them, to reflect on them, to meditate on them, and depending on that, then we can understand correctly and discard the 12 links of dependent origination.
다들 되지라. 그래서 알아서 딩시 남샤를 지인 바 있는 양다. 딩시 담바 시 남샤 양 다와체 셰구구이나.人인게 셰네다 냠린 셰구구 가서 전도이나. 당어서 가인스나. 딩시 남샤데 친지 말로버나. 땡베 결혼을 교신지 녀바도 거 식세. 신 개발로 된 거였어. 슝루 지마메바라 니바르도 창고에서 슝루 지마메바 마떤 투겐기 교신지 거야 최신무이 말해. 저랑 슝루 지마메바질 창고를 달루루 요새기 슝다바질 창고야래. 대달아 때네 딘시기 남샤 타라 가리 임바 있는 알아서 뭐네 다 세부 시부지 시에 그 탑시디 제국이야래. 다들 만호와 시에 탑시 제국이야래.
So if we really wish to understand properly or correctly the Four Noble Truths, in order to practice them, yeah, we need to practice. We want to put them into practice. So we have to understand them correctly, on the proper way, accurately. And this depends on the virtuous friend. We necessarily need to rely properly on a virtuous friend. And our virtuous friend will explain the tradition, will teach and explain the tradition. And depending on that, of course, the tradition which at best should follow Nagarjuna's and his heirs. Then and his heirs, yeah, and spiritual, how do you say, sons. So then, depending on that, we can understand the different ways to explain the Four Noble Truths, and we need to find a way, a method to put them into practice in a proper way, accurately, non-mistakenly.
나도 우선 방안저 알레시엔 거에 찍던데 로아다 제가 나도 가도 임바이나 송로가네 친지 말로 봤던데 되네 캐바질라 땡구고 요래 세지와 근데 제가 알아 교신지 들라고 요래 세지와 이 계지모 쇼인 바래 송로가네 친지 말로 봤던 게 있다 교신이 당원에 진 캐바지 거래 세지 나라서 민기여바상 돼야 요말했을 민첨보첨보시 따바이나야 그 최고 돈다 신기면은 되네 그런다 고고태야지 마도 실업계에 랑가요 말했어. 제가 송로도 친지 말고 되네 캐바치를 된 거를 세대 계신부 쉬우지 되랬어.
And so this shows that we necessarily need a virtuous friend, a teacher, a proper teacher, yeah, which can help us to understand properly the the tradition, yeah, because and this teacher, the appropriate teacher, it's not a question of a name, you know, if that person has a big name and so on. If that person has a big name but doesn't know properly the Dharma, then this person will deceive us. Yeah, so instead of putting us on the proper way, then the way will be impeded. Yeah, so so that's why it is very important from the start to find a virtuous friend or teacher, proper teacher.
맞으세요. 다 교신이 된대지. 다 결혼은 니네 되네. 출신도 땡고 그랬어. 출신도 땡고 그래서는 싸워 대박 참받아. 대까지 재수 대박은 그걸 차와서더라다. 제국을 열었어. 로? 다 된다. 띵주 친지 말아 봐지 제국을 열었어. 로? 대개 전부 찍으랬어요.
So when we found such a teacher, then we need to rely on him properly as well. Yeah. So we have to rely properly on the teacher depending on our attitude. We need to think again and again on his great kindness, and also we can rely on him properly with our activities, with our actions. Yeah, the way to rely on a teacher non-mistakenly is very important from the start.
그래. 다 되네 가라서나. 나나서 대 가인스나다. 된대기 기회 신지라 땡주 친주 말아봐 제자로. 그러나 땡주 친주 말아봐 제제 대다기 좋네. 딱 지마매비 슝루라. 딱 저랑 슝루 양 따바체 녀토바시 거다 된다. 살치 녀게 민디 살니 녀게 민디 로. 소소결라 귤라 오늘 전에 귤라 녀바 많이 게 봐도 책 녀토바시 거래.
타마딜라 되겐라 고츠나.
소소 돈다 무시 소소 맛이 그 봐도.
맞어.
녀고랬어. 다 녀고 녀에 살치 녀니 대상 그 지금 말했어.
맞어. So then we have to rely properly on the teacher, and he can teach us the pure tradition. Yeah, and of course it's important for us to listen to those teachings on the tradition that he will give us. But still, it is not enough. Yeah, we need to rely on him until we correctly understand the meaning of what he is teaching us.
다 된대지네. 소소 양 따바지니. 되네. 소소 문에 되네 그 나도 같이 투도 로중 제제. 되네 로중 제바 좀더 마세베. 소소게 문에 그 나랑 신야 랑 쳐도로. 소소 길어 또바 길어 제랑 미유도 송제. 나랑 기타 쳐대다 단단한서 밀려ren지 자신보 되지다 태. 된초 자신보 되지다 태. 되네 기회신 자신보 되지다 태 스체는 로다 되지 송자. 다 네게 내가 된대게 소소게다 락도 여바다고 저래. 다 되게 돼 마셔 제제. 오늘 전에게 슝루고 된다 되게 되냐. 심줄라 네바 많이 게 봐도 되냐 장긴 상상. 도스가라 셈라지 샤토가 중앙이나 되는 소소다 뭐네지 좋아해야지 요래.
As we said, it is important, of course, to study how much we can, yeah, as long as we can, yeah, the study that we have to do. Yeah. We try to do our best, yeah, to study as much as we can, and until we find the proper meaning of that, as we said, because we need to cultivate the goal to obtain the realizations in our mind stream. Yes, so this is the main goal. And now we have all the proper conditions for that. We have obtained the precious human rebirth, and we have met the precious Dharma, and we have met the precious teacher. So now this opportunity is so important. We should not lose it. Yeah, so then we should cultivate the aspiration to listen and reflect on the tradition until we properly get the meaning of that.
야당 딘시 남샤 차라 탐질라 다 소속의 원에 네바마니 그 봐도 라 푸다 쳐바치 된다 마시 그 봐도 되네 소송원에다 중다 지어야 된 탑시도 쳐고래 아수 되는 소속의 흉들라 흉로 드마면 왔들라 장애의 탑시도 쳐고 야래 도스가 지나다 안 들어오네 매저 된다 된 봤어 대개 조중 상원 밀려 렌지 탑에 타고 쳐봤다 세상에서 네 돈다 춘중 말에 돈다 하장게 계신 거랬어. 깨워는 새로 탐지게 되는 안 소리 되게 그 싸운데 그 다른 렌토가 제고야 그랬어.
And so this explanation of the Four Noble Truth, according to its different layers of subtlety, we have to listen to that and to reflect on that and to discriminate on that until we properly get the meaning of that, as we said. So it's important to study again and again and to work on our mind, as we said. So this is important to get this aspiration and to get all the methods that will help us to put into practice what we heard. So in that case, our human life has a great meaning. Yeah. It's not a small meaning. It's not something without any meaning. On the contrary, it has a very great meaning because now we can produce all the causes and conditions in order to be happy along all our lifetimes, next lifetimes.
대사단 도상자 달리 드라마電子 타라 탐절라베 되즈다 민도데 이내양 가인스랑 우마랑 규바 맨제기 켈랑베 템바시디電子 라바스라고 그랬어. 우마 탕규베 마도 켈랑 마통이電子 납사 참으시 그랬어. 대라電子 납사 참으시잖아요. 다 된다 우시 가인성 고불루주게 치더 숨바나 신게 대코나 따가서電子 납사 참면 납사데 맞아 네바도 시고요래 대시발라 나라서 태섬 지야돼 다 만화지 지고요래 대야 푸다 쳐바지 지고요래.
And so, of course, we don't have so much time in order to explain all the different layers of subtlety about the Four Noble Truth. And we could say that from the Swatantrika, Madhyamaka onward, up to down to the Vaibhashika, we could say their explanation of the Four Noble Truth is coarse. And according to the Prasangika Madhyamaka, then the presentation from the Prasangika Madhyamika tenet holders is the simplest way to understand the Four Noble Truth. Yeah? So then it is exactly according to what Nagarjuna taught, yeah, the Four Noble Truth. And we necessarily need to understand that in a proper way, in an accurate way, and discriminate finely about that.
배나 누살당 그래 미다바다 동아와다 동아다 담에 있잖아요. 딜라 동에 dembe 캐시 시 있으라고 야래. 캐지 주루나 당부 시디들에電子 미다서 캐지 주루야로 데레나 캐지 당부 시디 된 말에. 저다 캐지 시 되나네 다 타르도나 동화다 담에게 남샤데 시고야래. 동화다 담에게 남샤 시고 관계 동화다 다 매서 다 매주게 다데 가르래서 저거 Wo dendegi gacha charaga namsha de ngaranze ta puta shoba che shegu yare ta tartuna sara tartuna gacha dikabe kane tongba yi tutu sa che gacha de nganzo shegu yare dendegi majona dene nganzo gacha chamu de go ma do ba yina de chola gyapsu chu sa laba ma do che chola gyapsu jodan de shingi mare 초 간대지리 겹수 시기보다 하고고야 말해. 오늘 김규라 겹수 최대 nhập술람 배드니 된대기 냠는기 림발라네 대 김규군조 대 셰토고 말해. 대마저는 된대기 파토베 상기 군조 대다 녀바녀 두고 말해. 자방 대탐제 같이 참 똥바니 세처로 똥바니 또비 싫어 되라 때는 연구해 지레샤. 아도 들리잖아 저는 안저 남샤데 셰고야데 개심무샤 그래서면 저 군주 숨세데 안저로 신의 대바 타바데 동리 마도나 신의 대바 토의 민두 어디 개심무샤 했어
And so, as we said, impermanence, suffering, empty, and selfless are the first four characteristics of the Four Noble Truths. Yeah? Each Noble Truth has four characteristics, so we have 16 characteristics, and the first four ones are those, yeah? Impermanent, suffering, empty, and selfless. So here, we have to understand what means empty and selfless, yeah? Of what kind of object of negation we speak about when we say empty. Empty of what? Or when we say selfless, it means which type of self are we discarding, are we negating, yeah? So this is very important to understand that point of view from the subtlest way, yeah, to understand that. Because if finally we don't understand the meaning of emptiness, yeah, and what it negates, its object of negation and so on, then we cannot understand the subtlest way to understand the Four Noble Truth and then the three jewels. There is no way to understand the true, how do we say, the Dharma jewel, yeah, Dharma Ratna, Dharma jewel. It is very important to understand emptiness in order to really know what means the Dharma jewel. Yeah, otherwise we just say, oh, I take refuge, I take refuge, I take refuge, and that's all. But still, we need to understand in what kind of jewel where we take refuge. Yeah? So without emptiness, that's just impossible. And if we don't understand the Dharma Ratna, how can we understand the Sangha Ratna, the Sangha jewel? This is not possible as well. And if we don't understand what they mean, how can we understand the final jewel, the Buddha Ratna, the Buddha jewel? Yeah, so without emptiness, it is just impossible to understand the three jewels of the refuge. So that's why it's so important to understand that, to understand the emptiness, because without that, then there's no way to understand the three jewels.
나더래 되네 어다 잡군조선도 뭐 마셔 봐이나 내가 가르치기로 했으나 어다 비기면 근데 진짜 내가 근데 진짜 아 어다 추디 자신 뭐 쉬죠 추디 동 야, 리드 타점 보시면 리드를 찾았어요. 도저히는 도저지를 찾았어요. 근데 지금도 안 하죠. 리드 사도를 출장래. 다들 가르쳐셔야지 가려요. 다들아. 이내 안 저기 지고 접수 치세기 접용 뭐 마셔 봐 얘는. 그 계좌들을 접수 가르쳐줘. 어? 더 졸라당
So, and then if we don't understand correctly the three jewels of the refuge, then we can do many things. Like we can do a pilgrimage, we can go that way and in that country and so on. And then during that pilgrimage, we will understand, oh, that water is a sacred water, is the blessed water. So let's drink it. then oh, that mountain is blessed, so we should make prostrations and so on. Oh, that rock or that stone is so precious, so we should make prostrations and so on, without any understanding how much they are precious. Yeah. So that's why if we don't really understand the three jewels of the refuge, then at best all those pilgrimages and so on are just a loss of time.
re ta du ga che na ngan zo kya sa bo de ne da kya su she da chi le pwa che ne zu ga de chi le ya yo ba so la chi ta di chi le be de ne ka so yi shu che da zu da bu che ga do
Yeah.
pa che pwa che ne zu ga de chi le su chi ju gu ga da chi sang dang ba yi na wa da nang be de le ma ra ba su ba ma ra zo ge dan ji she ba na xin xi lang du ge ne qin ji ma lo bo de yan ge kya ba chi la de wanda shunglu chima mebe shunglu la chandar che ne sosu nga ne shungdu la muna dhane ge puda machobo tosam che ten sosu gyu la tongyi ge tawa che ye ge teni tabshi naso de che rwa tenre ge tabshi che wa yina tata tongyi gomba tela teni shine nga ranzo danji she ye teni 다 땐데 야라 중이서 송구도 서로 야나 중이게 당부 머리 봤어들레스 보다 머리 봤어야지 뭐시에 유다지다 머리 봤어야지 내가 소야게 라차데 카레스 내 동료도 싫어 임바 시야지 봐? 다 된다 동바 닌세je 또 투야게 두주 중스만 이 신의 최군조 사지다 되네 좋아 첨부지 니에지 갭 송주 여행하지다 최근주 수수기를 두교 여행이지 차대기 열었어
So, so then, similarly, some people would ask to receive some blessings. You know, they would say to a lama, "Please, I would like to receive your blessings," and so on. But in this case, if we don't really understand the process behind that, then what is the difference with the Christianity, for instance? Some people who pray for to Jesus and so on. What is the difference in that case? Yeah, but usually the Buddhist way should be very different. Usually we should understand things. We should understand what to adopt and what to discard, and we should do that depending on our study of the tradition, and we need to discriminate properly until we get the view of emptiness. And in that case, then we will use all the methods for us to meditate on emptiness and to realize emptiness. And then finally, we will correctly understand what mean the 12 rings of dependent origination. We will say, okay, the first one is ignorance. What is that ignorance? Then we will wish to know that kind of ignorance. We will wish to know, and we will get to know the way to discard it, to abandon that by the wisdom of emptiness. Yeah? So the wisdom of emptiness, if it is understood properly, can lead us to understand the Dharma jewel. And if we understand the Dharma jewel, then we will understand what means a being which has the Dharma jewel in his continuum. And then we will wish to get that ourselves. Yeah, so that's so important.
나도스래 다 동반이 있어야 되게 남샤들라 고아 중세 질레바 이나 와 동일의 고아 중세 질레바 이나 다대 야네 양도 검자 오늘 저기 슝루라 차삼 지기ချင်း교신 라 삼주니기 거네 삼바도 좋아니기 거네 땡기 되네 소소게 타삼 지기지기제 두스가 제바이나 그 야나 양도 살로 땅제 공부를 지기이나 되네 되네 아 동료도 동료를 과여야 되는 게 로데 칼리 동료도 세모지기게 뭐 좋토에 해야 되겠지
So if we have at least some kind of small understanding of emptiness, then we will wish to meditate again and again on that emptiness, depending on the tradition, on what says the tradition, and depending on the way to rely on a proper teacher by way of our attitude, our thoughts, and by way of our activities. Yeah, so we will wish to study and reflect again and again on emptiness, and meditate again and again on emptiness, until we will obtain the realizations of emptiness. Yeah? So the first realization is, of course, valid cognition, conceptual valid cognition about emptiness.
근데 정말이나 다 말해봐서 쉬어봤어. 말해비 말해봐들 강사게 당생기 말해봤어다. 저거 당생기 말해봐서 이니셔야 당제 와다 근데기 말해봤디 코에게 규칙이 되게 참아 셰트시 용거랬어. 하고서 코와스 코 속에도 소리도 쓰라데 말하도록 코알라 바다 자원내고 동네 녀로 중간디 딱 문제시 투바래.
So then we will understand what means ignorance. We will understand that there is a type of ignorance which is the self-grasping of persons, and ignorance which is the self-grasping of phenomena. Yeah, and then we will understand that it is the cause of all the samsaric experiences that we have. We will understand that it is what produces samsara. Yeah, so then we will understand that the samsara is a way to experiment suffering again and again without any freedom, and we will understand that which produces that is ignorance.
그래. 근데 지금도 되네. 딘진 세트. 디모 딘진 마리바사 치어로다. 간사가 단지다 쳐가 단지스. 와다데 다진게마 슈충충 드라이어 단지스. 코세베스 세바치 여den가 세번 고르덴세지로. 세베 세번 고르덴세지 톱주 여den가지. 근데 다시 또 여den가지. 다 되게 가인스는 랑게 기회시 지라때네 슝루 드마메 발라 터섬 제제 동바진게 전화 고아차바 디 바샤기 따게 대 누베따게 또 대슈기 따게 당한조 어다 딘지디스 세규요 된가지 셔야지 요래다.
And then this confusion, which is the grasping at true existence of persons, of phenomena, then we will understand that this ignorance can slowly decrease, and it can be pacified, or it can be, how do we say, when it is stopped in one sense. Yeah. So then we will understand properly the true cessations, the possibility of the true cessations. So then, if according to the tradition we listen, reflect, and meditate on emptiness, then by the force of, by the power of those imprints, then slowly this self-grasping will decrease.
나와 뒤통제 말아서 나와 뒤통제 가인스나 다 규모도 붙여야지 그래. 근데 주나 나와 뒤 규모도 붙여야지 그래. 규모도 붙여야스라 가인스 대응의 내절라 나와 따도 주바 맨장 능준들이 지어봐시. 규모도 붙으러 근데 타타 주도 쓰래. 타타 주도 나와서라. 저 타타 주도 나와서 돼. 뭐에 내저게 타타 인바 셰제 이는 나와 주도 나와다 보지. 개물라인 소리지로. 어디를 샤윤지다 가르쳐 그랬을라도 개물라인 소리 샤대 여러마도 그 신나지 여마로 그 주머니 바 하고 살아봐다. 어디래 규모도 보던데 규모 챙게 간주바데 코랑가 로 가서 주바 삼시를 마도지 나라도 로라 남삼시를 마도지 대응원에서 되면 바로 시사와 된대지도 다 대라 때네들은 먼저 배나 타다 주도 나와 된대지 타다 주도 나와 이내고 너들을 주도 나와 쉬는 게 봐 이내 내들을 주마인 바 시사도 대라 되면 집어민도 아, 규모생게 주베게 강 여바 되나시 코랑거 주버 좀 마도 저기 뭐에서 되면 신인도 들어드는 착박게 와라서 아, 차단게 와라서 뭐 대다디 용초조지 용 말다. 제가 나와 대탄제 준비를 신도 해야 돼. 동반이 마시는 나와 대탄제 준비를 신도 시두고 말해. 나와 준비를 신도 마시는 차단 쌤도 못 두고 말다. 뭐든 저랬어. 루다들어.
And so all the appearances, that manifest to us, they are like illusions. Yeah. So then we have to understand that things exist like illusions. If we understand the way that they don't, the appearance itself doesn't fit with the reality, then we will understand that. You know, like in the illustration, in the dark you see a colored rope and it seems to be a snake. Yeah. So in fact it is not a snake, it is a rope, but it appears to be a snake. So if we understand the situation, we understand correctly the fact that it is a rope and not a snake, then we will just laugh. We will just say, oh, it looked like a snake, but it is not. Yeah. So we will not be afraid. We will just laugh or just smile, you know, because we know the proper situation of that rope. We know that it is a rope. So it is the case with a magician, for instance, a wizard or a magician on the scene, you know, which shows different things. And if we understand it is just a trick, then we will not be confused. And this is the way for us to understand that things are just mere appearances, and those appearances don't fit with their reality. It's like the rope which looks like a snake, but it is not a snake. So it's like the magician on the scene which shows a trick. And if we just understand the trick, or if we just understand the proper situation, it is a rope, it is a trick, and so on, we will never have attachment, aversion, and so on. Yeah. So we will understand that the appearance is just fake. It is not true. It is a mistaken appearance. And if we don't understand emptiness, how can we understand the fact that everything that appears to us appears mistakenly? Yeah. So if we don't understand the trick behind that, then we will keep on being in attachment, aversion, and so on. That's the process.
다든지 나와 듣는 줄 따도 주매봐 푸다 쳐봐서 쉐봐 이는 거다. 다든지 정말에는 로디 가르치기도 손 로든지 시켜도 봐야는 다 차당 삼바쇼 잡아서 깨서 말어 왔어. 차당 삼바쇼 잡아서 마기는 대왕게 레데 쳐서 말어 왔어. 레년보다 싹싹 말어 왔어. 나도 레년 사바 대탄제 가인서 뉴몬게 왕게 사바다. 삼바 차당 셈게 왕게 사바레스. 된지 연도 다티면은 가르쳐 그랬을라도 다 레드네 사면은 그 제부동에 영담인도 왔어. 짐기 제가 나와 나와 따도 주면봐 동이 또be 싫어돼 나와 따도 주면봐도 또야래 제가 또be 싫어디 괜찮네 차당 셈 가지고도 머리바 코랑 가르고도 데라데는 차방 센 가르고도 데나 랭에 제방 가르고도 데네 링게 딱 가른 가르고도 살아데 닌 제부도 메데게 되냐마야 매 차르고도 와들다 안조 시저시 뭐야 됐다 가져선지 개심을 해도 해서 동료도 와야 동료도 be 싫어도 소소라 가져선지 개심을 해도 해서 오늘 림바 될 상담 스탄고 그래
And so then if we analyze properly the fact that the way for things to appear doesn't fit with their reality, their mode of abiding, then if we realize properly that, then there will be no opportunity for us to produce attachment and aversion. Yeah? And because we will not have so much attachment and aversion, then we will not accumulate so much bad karma, yeah, negative karmas. And because we will not accumulate negative karmas, then we will not experiment the results, suffering. Yeah, so that's the way to understand the process there. Yeah, if we understand emptiness, then we understand that things appear in one way and exist in another way. So because of that wisdom of emptiness that we will maybe at some point realize, then we will understand that we will make sure that ignorance will be eliminated. Then because of the elimination of ignorance, then attachment and aversion will be eliminated. Then we can also discard bad karma, and then all the sufferings which are the result of the negative activities, negative karma, yeah, we will not experiment that. So this is the very basic way to understand how much emptiness is important. If we really want to get that point, how much emptiness is important, then we have to think about that process.
This one?
No.
다 그냥 아주 드라마 살다인데 단도 송도다 아 근데 야마 중립이 취도 송슬라데 14번째네 어 동해 덴바다 군주 덴바스 14번째만 송바이는 근데 야마 중립이 토나 송야레스 다 야마 중립이라 되네 되네 송고 다 되네 나라서 남바 탄제기 토마메가 마리바네 가시 바르게 근데 야마 중립이 쿠르즈양 더라슬라데 코 쿠즈 딘데 두고야 돼 두고 요아르데 얘네양 차라리 켜봐 열었을라도 가르송 거 열었으나 알았다 뭐 짜오 머리 바꾸라고 차라리 켜봐 쉬어줘 그런데 어머 남기 문에게 코에 짜와 지는 게 머리 바디 켈랑 투기면도 되게 못 신기면도 다 된다 하고 두면도 어디는 차도 견디 차도요 근데 어머 소라 정말 당 알아도 내가 치서도 알아 머리 봤을 때 간사가 단지게 머리 봤다 쳐가 단지게 머리 봤어야 돼 고물 누르고 써야 대래도 와 사실 와 내 셰고야라
So here, if we understand the 12 links of dependent origination, then we can have a chance to understand their subclust mode of abiding. Yeah. So we will understand that the 12 links in themselves, we can say, manifest sufferings and origins, the true sufferings and true origins. And here, the most important thing is to see that all the Buddhist tenets will accept that. So here on the text, all Buddhists accept the samsaric process through the 12 links of dependent origination from fundamental ignorance to old age and death. Yes, so this is a very important point. We have to be convinced about that. All the tenet systems accept the 12 links, but there is something very important is that from the Vaibhashika to the Swatantrika, they will not understand the subtlest way to get at the 12 links, yeah, to understand, for instance, the subtlest type of ignorance, which is the first link. Yeah, like they cannot just understand that. They cannot just understand the subtlest way to assert the first link, which is ignorance. ignorance which is self-grasping of the persons and the self-grasping of phenomena. So only if we understand the way for Arjuna to explain that, and then we will have a chance to understand the surplus way to understand the 12 links.
that's it. Those Karsumuto, that in it, Tele, Mariba, Sheba Desava, Mishiba, Mombala, Sershi, Tanagi, Yenachonyananga, then Tome Mariba, Salayundegana, de Mariba, Mishiba, Mombala cigarettes, Kam Mishibares, Kam Mishibares Lade, Chenam Nilu Tatuba de Mishiba, Chenam Nilu Tatuba the Tribur Shege. Jibjigila, Mariba, Mishibas laudo. Matonga, Kamatonga, Shanam, Nilu Tartuba de Matonga. The Tonga Tiber Chickens. Guardian Matonga Rebecca, Arasa, Guardian Matonga, Arasa, Tesam Yanta, Chemos, Skunzedita. Arasa, Tesam Yanta, Majaba, you know that the Matore, Mishibare, Maribare. What the Negi Gengi, the Chadam Sem Gedada, to get the Sumun Gore.
And then the text says, among these, what is called ignorance is said to be a lack of knowledge or a kind of blindness. Yeah. So it obstructs the way to perceive reality. Yeah. So that's the way for emptiness. For ignorance to obstruct or to veil the mode of abiding of all phenomena. Yeah, so we don't see, we are blind, we are obstructed. Yeah, we cannot see the proper way for things to exist. Yeah, so that which obstructs our observation of the mode of abiding, this is that ignorance. And we have that ignorance because we could not up to now have a proper study, a proper reflection about the way things exist. Yeah, so because we have this type of ignorance which obstructs the mode of abiding of all phenomena, then all the other afflictions can arise in our mind.
Oh, yeah, that was it. That the nation, that was soon. Ah, Taiwan, Mariba Taiwan. Mariba, the nation in this not Taiwan, they don't have Minduna, don't have the girl and you do say. Ah, that they want they want to get top the shiggy Mindus, chicks. Guess the Shengen, you are in a young top the Lambezu chicken Mindus, at the chat. You must some response. This shows get some shine, but right?
So then the text keeps on saying, okay, so among these what is called ignorance, then because of this ignorance, we engage in the causes of suffering, even though such suffering is undesirable, and we ignore the means to happiness, even though such happiness is desirable. We desire that happiness, but we don't know what are the means to obtain that. And His Holiness keeps on. And even if we knew them, because of a lack of effort, all these torments caused by suffering arise. Yeah, so we can see those three steps. Yeah, ignorance, then we wish happiness, but we don't know how to obtain it, and so on. And then even if we know what are the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering, we don't put effort in order to produce them or to discard them.
다 동해 민도 나야 동해기 교란 조gin도 세대 동해 민도 나야 동해기 교란 조gin도 서나 가사들라 라오메 바치자 동해기 교란 조gin들라 라오메 바치자 뉴몽의 샤모도 친제 가인스나 뉴몽 내가 소야기 규제도 민도 머리바데 하고 무슨 머리베 된 가인스나 대하 마고바 인데다 다 머리바 디왕게 차방 셈케야다 대왕게 된 레냐바 사야다 되게 상고 누가를 연구도스 제가 된대게 가사데 머리바 슈첨부 얘기 대왕게 차방 슈첨부 얘기 대왕게 되는 배고나 레 마부 싸게 오다 된대게 리디 대라 되는 동네 마부 영경에 가사데 다도 버다스 동네 그 동네든 되게 말았어 그 내가 동네든 되게 면 얘네 그 동네 민들게 동네들이 주들라 그 주되게 하래 주바데 그 라와메가 주되게 하래 명호배 샹도 치는 주되게 하래 다서 같이 조신 주고야 말해
And so, yes, of course, nobody wants to suffer. Yeah, but still, even if we don't wish for suffering, then we again and again produce the causes of suffering. So it seems that all the individuals lack freedom. Yeah, they are not free. Yeah, they are under the power of afflictions, and because of that, then because of ignorance, we are under the power of the other afflictions as well, and then we accumulate negative karmas, and then we experiment suffering, even if we don't wish for suffering. Yeah? So that's why we are totally freeless. We are not free. Yeah? We are under the power of ignorance and the other afflictions. So that's why here, that's the process here, which is explained, that nobody wish for suffering. Still, we produce the causes again and again because we don't know that we are under the power of ignorance and the other afflictions, and under the power of all those afflictions like attachment and aversion and so on. Then we accumulate negative karmas, and we have to experiment their results, suffering. Yeah, so so that's why we are totally lacking freedom, yeah, in that process.
대장아서 동네 민들나야 동네기 교란 저기도 써야 돼 조당 리바 도스가 상단 게셔 로아가서 가인스나 동네 되게 아마도 동네 교란 저기도 써는 딱 가서 코아바 차사래 먼저 코아바 차선가 코아가 코 동네 되게 용대 매대 이네 코 동네 되는 죽도도 가르쳐랬으나 디 먼저 코아가 타야게 탑시도 맞아야 코아디 가서 코 라냐 코 망고지 두개게 되네 교디사게 두스고 알아봐
So we are all those samsaric beings, yeah? All those samsaric beings that even though we wish for happiness, we don't want suffering, still we produce the causes of suffering again and again, as we said. Yeah, so all samsaric beings are like this. We are all like this. It means that we accumulate the causes of samsaric existence again and again.
나도 살다 부자 다들 대만 대장 대외 주 다 대외 된된 탑시 있어래 누구 대화 더 봐라 다 대화들라야 대화를 뭐 먹고 싶어 천디 대화 대화 심해 대화 야나 탈베 대화 야나 탄지 캠베 대화스 대화라 답에 람디 먹고 싶어지 림바 먹고 싶어지다 림바베 자타 동다 먹고 지야 달래 가서 도도도도를 싶어이나 천디 대화스라데 칭샤 천디 드네 자와 치매기 대화스 칭샤 드네 탈베 대화스 칭샤 응 탄지 캠베 대화스라데 다드나 림바 먹고 싶어지 여자와 아들에 다 대단하게 천디 대화르지 임바 있나요? 천디 소속에 루심니가 대단 영화에게 탑시 됐을 거야. 베라차선 루심 대단 벤조고 돈에 대단 가인 건지 돈에 다 된다. 대달아 때는 가서 대화 연구 여봐 인데서 류 대화당 셈 개바치당 튕긴 상고치 로와 와 데리지 용하게 탑시디 당가서 다좀 마시바 왕게 되네 메스 다가 하나를 녀라 싶이 용도 왔어.
And then for the happiness that we wish for, so the line after is okay, and we ignore the means to happiness even though such happiness is desirable. So here there are many levels of happiness. We can speak of the happiness in this life, happiness in the future lifetimes, the happiness of liberation, and the happiness of the omniscient state. Yeah, so then we could think about hundreds or thousands of happiness, of types of happiness. Still, if we resume, then if we if we summarize them, then we can say there are those four. Yeah, the happiness in this life, and happiness in the future lifetimes, happiness of liberation, and happiness of the Buddhahood. And with regard to the happiness in this life, then we should make sure that we can have some kind of healthy way of life for our body and our mind, and the way we use our possessions and so on, yeah, what we possess and so on. So then we should have all the proper conditions in order to be happy in this life. But it seems that it's not the case. Many people don't know just how to be, to have a healthy way of life. Yeah, so then they have problems again and again during that lifetime.
맞았어요. 딱 기와 치마라지 차시나 치매기 대화디 쪼라 차샤나 미기 죽은 거 추르송아 들다스 하상게 계신보 와 미기 죽은 거 추르선은 답아 쉬워지 계신보 샤래 제가 미기 오 죽봉어 세다 캬즈 남지 야는 양도 상당고야 알레 다 미기 오 추스다 가르도 다 대pon고도 와 판단 간데르 대 남자도 시야데 계신은 계신직 차버려.
And for the happiness of the future lifetime, then the main means to get that is to abandon the 10 negativities. Yeah, so this is very important. So that's why we already mentioned that, and we should reflect on that again and again in order to be sure to be happy during next lives, next lifetimes. So then, if we reflect on the 10 negativities, and we will check, we should abandon them. And how is it possible? What is the way to abandon the 10 negativities? So we should reflect on that regularly.
아베라 차상한서 타르베 대화 주식이 교스라데 추릉 라바치레 땡에즈 라바치레 시르그 라바치레 라바송이 없는데 저 타르토나 드는 시르그 라바드레스 다 시르그 라바 나오네 쪼데 가연스나 동이도 be 시르드레스 와 테나 타르베 고스라고 타르베 고 동바이 또베 와 동바이 또베 시르드라 타르베 고 뒤도스나 다 타버를 양조에 고디체 맞다 된다 제가 가져선지 다 계시무셔도 했어.
And then, if we speak about the happiness of liberation, then it is mainly due to the practice of the three superior trainings. Yes, so the training in ethics, training in samadhi, and training in wisdom. Yeah, so those are the main ways to obtain liberation. And ultimately, we could say, or finally, in the end, this is wisdom, which allows liberation, and which is the liberating path, we could say. And mainly within wisdom, there are so many types of wisdom, but here we speak about the wisdom of emptiness. Yeah? This is the door which leads to liberation, the door of liberation. The wisdom of emptiness opens the door of liberation. So we need to reflect again and again on how much it is important.
아야 나도 쎄. 다 담제 캠바르지 산단 바이나 대 강하라. 되는 참바 닌지 화삼 천juk 센스. 다 쪼르 교배 개세게 쳐바되게 다 담제 캠베기 두에게 다 대화 타르토베 대화 주지기 교 봐. 뭐도 이 말해.
And then about omniscience. Yeah, so on the top of what we mentioned before, ethics, samadhi, and so on, then and wisdom, we need to add loving kindness, compassion, universal responsibility, and bodhicitta, and so on. Then, thanks to those points, those aspects, then we can obtain the happiness of Buddhahood.
나도스래. 다데 가인스나 파바다 탄지케바 가르투 이거봐 얘네야. 다 동료도 왜 싫어도 매도 미루와시래. 동료도 왜 싫어도 매도 미루와시다. 매도 미루와슬라도 네버도 고해도 동료도 왜 싫어도 차요래.
And especially for liberation and Buddhahood, then that wisdom of emptiness is indispensable, is necessary. It's for sure. We really need that. That's the meaning of that.
나들. 도자. 땅아도 가슴고야랬을라도 게시스. 땅 하나 저게 샌디 되게 두단 신기도 깨워 치면기 다 되게 주지서 밀려 렌체시 두단지 신기도 탈배 고방 두단지 신기도 탄지기도 고방 두단지 신기 여봐이나 시신도 녀서 많아 봐이나 다들 신앙 사버를 쓴 거다. 그 항상 신앙 사버를 때문에 시신도 지금 말하다. 어디 숨바들 숨도 안 돼. 시가 무슨 관계에서 동해 나와 대중앙이 숨도 와. 다들 신앙 사버를 쓴 거다.
And so yes, so some people could say, okay, I know how to be happy in this life. I know how to obtain a precious human rebirth for next lifetime and so on. I know what are the means to obtain liberation and Buddhahood. But if those persons just don't put them into practice, then it's just something totally ridiculous. Yeah, so some people would claim that they know the means to be happy, but because they don't put effort in that, then that's so sad in one sense. And so that's why here in the text, the sentence says, and even if we knew them because of a lack of effort, all these torments caused by suffering arise.
맞았어. 다 도저는 당한테 대외 전바 도저는 숨도로. 도저. 다 베레베레 저는 가서 다 동료도 그 싫어도 되나 다 개치시랑 체시도 직 차용도 되네. 다 간절히 임바 이내야로. 되네. 정신기 예매. 되네. 제가 제대 팔아. 뭐? 랑라 지들 나와 나신식. 들루군원에 두바 싸워내 매바시로. 들루군원에 두바 싸워내 민도 제세드바 타시도 로시게 그랬은 거다.
So it was some kind of explanation of the different types of process for obtaining happiness, the different types of happiness, and so it shows how important is the wisdom of emptiness. Yeah? So then thereafter we need to analyze things. Yeah, we have to check if things exist the way they appear to us or not. Yeah? Do phenomena exist inherently, or don't they exist not inherently? So we need to analyze that. We need to check if the way for things to to appear to us corresponds to their way of existence, yeah? The mode of abiding. Yeah? So this is the okay. Yes, we need to check, yeah, if it exists from its own side, if it exists the way it appears or not.
야, 나도 참, 나만 드라마치 로그인 해봐. 야, 드라마. 다들 인주다, 치르다, 아, 다다나 가인스라, 머리바 세달라. 나오 냠베 머리바달라. 나오 냠베 머리바달라. 리마니 첸도스. 단징게 머리바 세지다. 나오 냠베 로. 되니? 로 세마시 니도스. 라, 되니데 남자 개발 다 카가 임바데 다 세부 쇼시고 그래스.
So then if we follow the text, His Holiness says, and if, okay, so that we've seen that. And regarding this ignorance, although there is ignorance which grasps the self by thinking I, not every cognition that thinks I is self-grasping. Yeah, so we have to make a proper distinction between the two. One way to think about I is the self-grasping, and another one is just a valid cognition. So this is very important to make the distinction between the two.
드스레셔. 괜찮은 게 찍죠. 다들 텐데지 이마 인데서다. 다 가슴 거려서 다도 두 번은 짐비 던지 머리베게 짐비 다디 자완의 탄예도 요 말해서 이내양 던지 머리기 베게 미베 유기 술라미네 나라미네 세대 텐데게 남 다디 탄예도 요래 딜레 준데 때도 좀 다스면 딜러스기 요래서 에 요르다 탄예도 요래서 대니기 개발 최고다. 탄예도 유배 다 쓰지. 렌제기 땐도 유배 다. 나 대원도 나 동네 민주세기 다 대다. 다 던지 머리배기 다 대 부모가에 나라네 째네. 저 딱든 째가 저네. 부모가고 가나에 떠보면 라마치도 징댕에기 다 니부대. 다 가가지 여봐치라. 때는 딱 쌈도 여 마도 여 말다. 렌제기 땐도 좀 다디 풍부라 때는 딱 쌈도 마도 풍부전 세간 저가 라야 말다. 던지 머리백에 숨어야 세간 조세. 딱도 째는 여봐진 진도 제가 군이데 그 데리 스타베 카딘 잡더라.
And so here torments of ignorance. Okay, and not every cognition that thinks I is self-grasping. Okay, and then we need to make the difference between the two. Yeah, as we said, there is a self which never existed conventionally, and there is a self or me or I which exists conventionally. Yeah, so our ignorance conceives ourself as truly existent or existent from its own side or within the basis of imputation and so on. So this kind of self never existed, even conventionally, but the object of observation of that ignorance, the self which exists conventionally, this one, we cannot discard it. Yeah, so when we say, I wish to be happy, I want to discard suffering and so on, then that me or that I or that self exists conventionally. It exists merely through a mere imputation, depending on the aggregates. So this self exists, and it is the object of observation of ignorance, which conceives a self which never existed, a self which could be found within the aggregates, within the basis of imputation. So this ignorance which grasps at the self which could be found within the aggregates, grasp at a self which is non-existent, but its object of observation, this self which is merely imputed depending on the aggregates, this one exists conventionally. So we need to make the difference.
맞았어. 딱 내 가인 송 드려 송도아. 제가 근데 여봐 인디서 다. 질 다다 셴이 타이도 여봐 인데스라데. 다세 지요래. 다세데 유주게 다데 가인데 풍불라 때는 딱 받sam도 요래. 레 준저게 땐도 주베 다 되래. 나 대원데 나 동이 문두세게 다디 요래. 대 타이도 요래. 나 여봐 인도다 셴세데 요래. 셴 라셴스 이제 탐지게 쳐도 된 남기 계획 오만은 뭐지 먼저 탑으로 쇼스 면은 잡다 계신 봐 로아데 데데기 셴세데 요래 다 여봐 인도 셴세데 요래 얘네 말아도 매주게 다 매주게 셴세데 하고 와죠 그래 매주 다데 가르서 다 풍불라 때문에 라와쳐도 여버죠 다데네 매주게 셴세는 셴세를 라원에 줘도 셴시네 와 때문에 라원생 그 줘도 셴시네 다 된다 그래 마도 지금 지당 셴여 셴게 된도 장바다 니지다 장죽 생 깨고 셴여래 와 셴데도 상기고 고마 타고 상기고 고마 타네 셴데 줘야 돼 뭐더래
And we have another sentence here in English. Okay. Since in general the two, I and others, exist conventionally, there is also the apprehension of I and others in the mind of the Tathagata and so on. Yeah, so it means that generally speaking, there is the I, the I, which is merely imputed depending on the aggregates. So this one exists conventionally. And because there is me, there are others necessarily. Yeah, so others exist conventionally. When we recite again and again, almost every day, may I obtain the state of Buddhahood for the sake of others, then others have to exist. Yeah, so they exist conventionally. So this is important to ascertain that. So the self that never existed is a self which could be independent without any relation or connection with the aggregates. This one never existed even conventionally. And the others that never existed is an other which could exist from its own side. This is totally impossible. So those two are negated. But generally speaking, me and others necessarily exist. If we wish to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and so on, this is for the sake of others. We wish to be enlightened for the sake of others. So they have to exist conventionally.
대상 하나서 딜라 다다나 가르치는 순구야래 내주대 가는 다랑 생이가 열었을 때 가르치는 순구야랬을 때 니리지 누주쇼대 게 벽이 캐봐 먹고야래 봐 제가 다세대 탄에도 요 말에 현세대 탄에도 요 말에 숭내대 먹고 쉬어야래 얘는 라운에 역으로 숭내대 먹고야래 봐 난저가 얘는 라운에 내고 그랬으라고 야래 그래서 얘는 라운에 역으로서 얘는 라운에 내고 그랬어 난저 제가데 considerable 내가 슉 첨부지 숭내대 존재되래 예스 랍사도 라운에 내배 따르스 right?
So why here His Holiness is explaining that me and others exist conventionally is that because in Tibet there were many scholars who could make a mistake. Some of them, or many of them, could say, oh, I don't exist conventionally. others don't exist conventionally. Yeah, they would say because if something exists, it has to exist from its own side. So then, if we negate the existence from its own side, it means for them that we negate existence per se. Yeah. So this is not our point. Our system is to say if it exists, it necessarily doesn't exist from its own side. Yeah. So this is this is the reason why here His Holiness is explaining that conventionally speaking, me and others exist. So again, to repeat, when we say to exist, this is the very sign or the very reason to prove that nothing exists from its own side.
나스르샤 도자 제가 점된 대기 디신식의 투구라양 다다 신스 아 다다 신스 바 여라 서도 무슨고 군자가래서는 점된 대기 과연 당내 상기가 고마 줘야 돼 생전기 돈도 yin 순거로 신 생전기 돈도 yin 있어지 제가 마사지 도와스 신 생전세지 도와스 와데 텐데지 여봐데 디시베 투원라 야레스다
And then the other part of the sentence here, in the mind of the Tathagata, in the mind of the Bhagavan, however, the ignorance, concerning the notion of I, no, there was another part here. Okay, sorry. Since in general the two I and others exist conventionally, there is also the apprehension of I and others in the mind of the Tathagata, or in the mind of the Bhagavan. So it means that even for the Bhagavan, even for the Buddha, there is me and others, because he is in accordance with reality. So he exists and others exist. He can ascertain the fact that he obtained Buddhahood for the sake of others, for the sentient beings, the other sentient beings. So he, the Buddha himself, ascertains the fact that he exists, or I exist, or me, the self, and the conventionally existing self exists, and others exist conventionally.
나도 우스가를 써놓으시다 아야 나도제 베라 세상 알아줘 나 여봐 인도상 알아 가르고도 했을라도 나라 지난 게 튕겨 사상 고도 좋아 베라 세상 가서 레라시도 가서 나라 도보 고기도 나라 레가 고기도 나라 남이 고기도 여러 봐나 여네 나 매나 되게도 과제 못도 와 좋아 나 대사 강과제 고기도 나라 그 개치 레가제 고기도 뭐다 남이제 고기도 도보제 고기도 세지도 나 여네 라고야 나 매나 되게도 매나 되는 나 거라 매나 되 과제 못도 와 지난 나 여세도 타이에도 여세 준들들 쓰나 요래 좋아
And so here, of course, the me or the I exists, as we said. So in order to understand that in an easy way, then just we can say because I exist, then I need a family, I need relationships, I need friends, I need a house, I need food, I need clothes, and so on. So that's the very proof that shows that the I exists conventionally. Because if I don't exist even conventionally, what is the point to have a house and friends and so on? So that's the reasoning, that's the proof showing that the me or the I exists conventionally.
매세한테 가라서라도 매스라 쑥 갈라에 떠봐매베 다데 매스 때문에 라마쟁게 다 주바지 매스 매주 다 되더라 다 되네게 떠봐매베 다데 가상의 때도 제가 줘다네 분배 때도 제가 줘네 매스 매봐인도 가사랑 신기 말로 봐라 되네 최랑 신기 말로 봐서 라랑 되다 강사게 담에도 최게 담에 셰데디 다메 시베 미규게 다데 가지 다데체 다데 강사게 된도 전에 니에메 강사를 시험 품비도 전에 니에메 가이스 전에 니주메 버다 강사 꼭 매베 다치레스 그 타에도 매베 다데레스
So, and then when we say there is one self that doesn't exist at all, then it is a type of self that could survive without the form aggregate, for instance, or the self which could exist without any relation with the aggregates. A self which is totally independent. So, when we speak about the self of phenomena, then the aggregates could exist without the person itself and so on. So if we look for them, if we look for a self that could survive without the aggregates, or if we look for aggregates within their own basis of imputation, this is impossible to be found. So this is the very proof that shows that independent self or autonomous self of person, of the aggregates, of phenomena and so on, is just non-existent, because if it were to exist, it could be found somewhere. But the fact that we don't find them, if we really look for them, then is the proof, is the sign that they don't exist even conventionally.
나들 대자 dirshebe ngaunyambe mariba 다도 짐발라 대응업에 내줄래 내주 업에 내주 가래 타에 잠도 요래 다시라 때는 딱 받잠도 요래 대래 신줄 오르디 다시라 때는 딱 받잠도 마인데 틈만 가서다 랑원 줘대 뭐지 디 신줄 오버래 신줄 오버선 대래 다 가인서 업에 내줄래 개와 세우더라 다드네 대응업에 내줄라 매배 다게 모서 어디다 다시를 때는 딱 잠만이베 다들다 대랑신디 샤네 대다도 두바 신윤데 마리베 된데 진윤데 다 마리바데 견제를 치주로도 시별로래 스나 럭셔리 스나 송에디 되래
And then the text goes on here. Okay. So, however, the ignorance concerning the notion of I, or the self-grasping ignorance, that we are explaining here, is contradictory with the mode of being of things and objects. As we said, what is the mode of being of things and objects is that they exist as mere imputations. So, but our ignorance thinks that things and objects would exist without being merely imputed, would exist inherently. So, and His Holiness keeps on, in other words, since there is an adherence to the fact that things are established as they appear, that is, as having their own essence or inherence, while the mode of being of things and objects is that they are devoid of their own essence or inherence, this adherence is a false cognition, a wrong cognition. I should correct here, a wrong cognition, in the sense that this cognition apprehends things incorrectly or fallaciously, mistakenly or wrongly, we could say. So, as we said, things exist as mere imputations, but our self-grasping ignorance is believing that things don't exist as mere imputations, is believing that things exist from their own side or inherently. That's why it's totally discordant with reality. It is a wrong cognition.
그렇지. 다 대신도서 대화되바다 동의 민두 냠배 나이 진주 되라야 양 등지 로시치다 나오 냠배드네 세멜로치 제니 여자 다 되나셔래 대화되바다 동의 민두 냠배 다 알아서 진주 시도와서라 나 대원도 나 동네 민주 세지 나 대원도 나 동네 민주 세들라 했다 진주들아 되네 야나 대원도 슬라데 대원 생이 줘봐 진대게 나 동네 민주 서 동네 런신 줘봐 진대게지 야가 대원도 봐나시 시기다 타야도 가서다 대원원이 내 저기 대원 되겠지 동계구의 저个동해대 민대가지 다 누스카라 용되게 두잖아. 와 테마지다는 아 너무셔 신이 두서 용되게 두스 거다.
So, and here on the bottom of the page 42 in Tibetan, similarly, with regard to the way of apprehending the I, which thinks about wanting happiness and not desiring to suffer, there are also these two, a wrong cognition, which is the self-grasping, and a valid cognition of the simple notion I. Yeah, so when we reject the resulting suffering, and then I'm not sure that we have to read that passage, but still the first sentence shows that it's the same. Yeah, when we say, I wish for happiness and I don't want suffering. Yeah, so there are two types. Yeah, we could grasp suffering and happiness as existing by their own characteristics or existing inherently from their own side and so on. But there is another way to apprehend happiness and suffering just as merely imputed. Yeah, so in that case, it is a valid cognition. And the other one is a wrong cognition, yeah, when we grasp at happiness and suffering as existing from their own side.
아들자. 다음에는 제부 동해다 대다 동해기 교 신앙의 깨라 민두버 겹기 초신 신에다와 세당함 되니 내가 어슈 친구요 로 견제 뉴모젠스다 겹기 초고 세당 쓰죠로 대라 이니 여러 순거다 제부 동해다 동해기 교 뉴모 되게라 신에 땅바서 대 탐제 베고는 싸우는 민두베 삼바치 삼바디 양다바지로 와 야, 미치를 롱라자 롱라는 야고 싸우는 코 통되면도 코로나 거기면서 시당섬 지인도 와서 보라. 대략 가가 열다 신유모를 절로 양다 봐라. 다스잖아요.
And then same passage here. So the first part was just about happiness. Yeah, I was mistaken when I translated suffering. Yeah? It was just about happiness. And we can grasp happiness as truly existent, and we just can ascertain happiness, which is a valid cognition. And this is the same for suffering. Yeah, so that's why here the last sentence in page 42 and the bottom and the top of the page 43, when we reject the resulting suffering and the internal and external conditions that cause it, there is an afflictive cognition. In terms of defective cognition or deceiving cognition, we could say, that is strongly rooted in aversion or detestation. When we say, oh, I just hate suffering and so on, this is an affliction. Yeah, this is a self-grasping which produces an affliction like hate, anger, and so on. And generally, when we consider what we call suffering as something undesirable and see the defects of its causes, the afflictions, there is a second, factually concordant cognition that rejects them. This is the valid cognition. Yeah, so here also for suffering, we have to make the distinction between a wrong cognition and a valid cognition.
아데샤. 대신도 대원 된도 내려와라야. 뭔도다 내려기 떠와 여신. 대화 대 거기에다 거기 중선된 맛이 인베 오라냐 시다 대화 된도 내와. 다 질 때나 동에서라 도저 샤샤바이나 동에 시바달라 민디가 대 주레다 뉴모라 니미스 따네 배 시타바네 답하거나 가서 친지로 가서 시 타반에 민두바 어디 따에도 로 양다 바래 왔어. 대신도 다 대왕문도 대와 있는다. 아, 내 도서 더도 니 와도 로 든디로 왔어. 와. 너 참아 든디로서 왔어 뭐다.
So here on on the top of the page 42, yeah? Yes,
어디죠?
42, yes, exactly. Yes, I said 43, but it was a mistake, 42. And okay, so the same is true for the pursuit of happiness. It is appropriate, yeah, because it is underpinned by reason to consider the search for happiness, such as the happiness of a higher rebirth and the ultimate good, as indispensable and necessary. Yeah, so when we say, okay, I wish to be happy, this is not like attachment, obsessive attachment. This is not the same. Yeah, when we wish to be happy and we wish to discard suffering and the causes of suffering, like the afflictions, then it can be a valid cognition. It's not necessarily an affliction. It depends. Yeah, it depends on the situation.
아야, 다 되는 신경 다 망고도 없어. 다음에 제가 신의 당왔을라도 동해도 동해이 줄라 신의 당왔어 지기. 와, 콘도 값서 시당스라도 콘도들라 시당스라고 해. 디가에서 도미 된대기 인지 규기 생제되라 신의 당왔으면 디 니모 차봐. 다 동해도 동해이 줄라 신의 당은 디로 된대 차봐. 와도도야 지금도 카가 여봐지 는 세보셔야 돼 캐좀 버리셔 아다 대나 신신의 배순 거다 상기 고마 터나 냠바다 타바 터나 냠베게 너바데 너바 야다 말했어 너바 뭐에네 지금 너바 세마랬어 그 너샤 말다스 제가 너바라양 너샤 그 상바 세지 용도 왔어 너샤 그 상바 세리 녀모래 얘네 탈바 너바 탐제 캠바 너바 되니 다 두손 칸 카레 차셔는 지칸 나도 쳐 지카 치르쳐 쓰자 잡아라 되니 거들 되니 떠나서 뒤야라 떠나 참바세지 여러분 참바대 인지세지 떠나 참바서라데 러브스라고도 와 직 타치든 다샤 직 타치도 땅 안들로 고주대 탈외교 참바대 인지세지 참바대 그봐 자다 되니 지카파 초대 지주카 초 초대 너바 민다와 진이 그봐
Yes. And then the text says, okay, the mere desire to obtain Buddhahood or liberation is not attachment. In short, there are the two. On the one hand, aversion, which apprehends the undesirable, and on the other hand, a correct cognition. I should put valid cognition, which considers the indesirable based on reason. So here we necessarily need to make the distinction when we say, okay, I don't want to suffer, I don't want to produce the causes of sufferings and so on. And then this is very important. This is necessary, and this is a valid cognition. But and to wish for the happiness of liberation and Buddhahood is also a very correct state of mind. It is a valid cognition. It is not attachment. Attachment is necessarily an affliction. But the desire to be happy, the desire to be enlightened for the sake of others are very necessary. This is the we could say that it is not turned inwardly, it is turned outwardly. We could make the difference like this, like when we speak about compassion and loving kindness and so on. Then we have to make the distinction with a kind of egocentric loving kindness. When we speak about love, for instance, we say love. It can be something very, very nice, something sublime, which is addressed to others. So it is outwardly turned, we could say. And there is another one which is egocentric. It is just turned to inwardly. So then if we make this that kind of distinction, it is easier to understand the way that one is an affliction and one is a valid cognition.
哎呀，都写。다들 송도 다들 가인산 dornas 민두바 잡게 쳐버 로라 시다다베 뉴모치다 균zen데 민두바 가사 민두바 잡게 쳐버 로 야다와 찍디 니유 양 대중나 삼베 데베 나세라양 청주 전도님 든베 로친지 마로와 찍다 차괴로 뉴모치다 도서 니 여바인데 드즈레데다 뿌리 제거레스 바다도 세카시도 붙여거레스 와.
So then the text keeps on. So the mere desire and so on. And it seems that there is some words which are missed here in English. Because here His Holiness says Dorna in brief. Okay, so it seems that there are some words that are missing here in English. So I will put them for next time. Okay, so then His Holiness just says that yes, on the one hand, the aspiration which seeks enlightenment, included in desire, because it is a kind of desire which anticipates the occurrence of something and is not distorted. And on the other hand, desire, attachment, which is an affliction. So here we should put in brief. Similarly, in brief, it is essential to make a fine distinction between them. One is a kind of important and correct type of aspiration, and the other one is an affliction.
야야, 나도 웃으셔. 나 초진의 가인상, 아주 가인상. 그래서 도저 정부 링덕면도 상기도, 메도서 깔래각면도 상기도. 야, 가정도 왜?
본다겠나?
지지랑 아주 도저 링다자 깔래각면도 상기도 메서.
아니야, 올라서.
최년계서.
So is it not too long for everybody here? Is it okay if we keep on, or is it okay if we stop, as you wish? Genla is asking.
배자 안 되샤시 공제대 가이스 데스칼레카기 따치도 상기도.
So maybe we should stop here because Genla feels that maybe most of us are a bit tired.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you for
Merci
your teachings.
beaucoup. Gracias.
Merci, Geshe-la.
Merci.
Grazie.
Anju senjo rinpoche, ma
che
kepa
bana,
ne,
che
ke
bana,
ba nyamba me ba yang, kone kondo
Kami
tero.
so
Gari rawa koro shingda. Tenda dewa malin juwa ne, chere songa tenze kya zwa. Shobe sede papo tenjuro ke. Okay.
Good night.
Good night. See you next week.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, all the
Thank you.
translators.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.